Hi, Dr. Jane Parsons. Of course, this is Jaire Miller. And for my final internship, I did work with the G-Force Mentors. So, for a quick introduction, the G-Force Mentorship Program is with the Office of Outreach at the university. And UNT is a four-year institution, so it's a little bit different than some other schools may do G-Force. But in the Office of Outreach, that is over on the enrollment side of things. So it's a little bit different than doing student affairs services and programs. My learning objectives with this internship were to strengthen understanding of barriers students face, understand how UNT addresses these barriers through enrollment services like G-Force, and then also to understand how outreach measures effectiveness to increase retention and persistence with the students that they serve. I chose G-Force because I wanted to learn more about all of the training that G-Force mentors did. I am a student who actually did not. I had the privilege of not having to fill out most of financial aid, applying to college by myself because my mom and dad knew how to do it. Since I'm not a first gen student, I always had that support behind me. If I didn't understand it, then I knew someone else in my family did. I wanted to see what impact they had on students because, like I said, I know they only serve a certain amount of students in specific schools. So I wanted to see what that impact was for students, and also being able to understand the difference with the students that don't have people there for them, such as G-Force mentors, and then the ones that do. I also wanted to see the differences in how this affected students going to college or deciding that they didn't want to. So, a little background on the G-Force program. They advise, mentor, and tutor students. With advising, they advise students on the next steps to take based on the conversations that they have during those one on one meetings through Go Centers. Go Centers are the centers where they basically have a set number of students that are mentors go to the schools and sit there for 2 to 3 hours and just make themselves available for the students that need them. In these advising sessions, they're basically one on one meetings, so still a bit of mentoring, but it mostly includes helping the student register for college applications, whether they need to take the SAT, ACT, registering for that, and also being able to help them with scholarships, FAFSA, and anything else that they need. With the mentoring, with UNT at least, they don't really get a specific mentor. So the students that are available to attend. For example, I went to one on a Friday. If the other mentors that are hired aren't able to attend, then unfortunately that school wouldn't have anyone there that day for mentoring. Or let's say that somebody did attend one time, the next Friday that they come, they may not be the same mentor that they get. So the mentoring is kind of hard to form those one on one bonds, but in general, they do speak about what students want to do and ask them what they want to do after high school, whether they decide to do college, community college, trade school, or go straight into the military. They also do offer tutoring. With tutoring, though, only one of the mentors that's currently here is able to tutor, and they only can tutor for algebra. So they do want to have more mentors that can tutor, but it's other steps that you have to go through and get not certified, but get approval from UNT before they can tutor. So my responsibilities kind of ranged from one end of the spectrum to the next. With Gwen, she allowed me to let her know what things I wanted to learn, especially since I was kind of thinking of not doing higher education. But she allowed me to help more on the HR side as well as still being able to be hands on with more higher ed, student affairs type positions and responsibilities. So this semester, I helped approve timesheets. I sat in on trainings just to see what the mentors learned. I helped with scheduling. So for the Go Centers, but we'll get into this a little later. But for the Go Centers, since a lot of them were virtual at the beginning of last semester and a little bit this semester until recently, I had to kind of schedule and see who was okay with what, if they wanted to be in person, if they didn't, and what their work and school schedule allowed if they had other jobs. I did assist with interviewing GeForce mentors because unfortunately we did have a lot not return for this semester. We had a lot of pretty seasoned, I guess you could say, mentors that had been in the program for a long time and decided no longer to come back, or they didn't respond. So it was hard trying to interview more. I also sat in on Go Centers, and then I did data entry for the end of year reports that are submitted to the government and the Board of Education. Before I get into the literature, I do want to talk about my Go Center observation and how that really basically gauged and paved the way for my literature review. So when I attended a Go Center, it was at Denton Ryan High School, which is right here in Denton. Students are pulled out of classrooms to meet with mentors. So they have a small sheet of paper that they all get, and then it highlights what they need help with. Whether that student is there or not is a different thing, but they give it to the professors. I mean, not the professors, the teachers. The teachers pull them out of class, and they are allowed to miss a little bit of class or their elective period in order to handle their business as far as with the Go Centers. What I observed was that a lot of the students currently have felt lost on what they wanted to do or if they wanted to do something. More specifically, we had a lot of students come in and talk about, oh, I know I need help with this with FAFSA, but I don't know what college I want to go to. I haven't applied yet. And so the mentors, I worked with 3 mentors, and then it was me just observing. But they were asking the students, okay, well, what things do you like? What do you want to do? What are you interested in? And a lot of the seniors are saying they don't know, they don't know, they don't know. Their parents just wanted them to apply, or their teacher told them to apply or come down here. I will say that in also observing, we did meet or have the Go Center meet in the counseling area. So the counselors are right there in their offices, and then there's like an office space where the door is closed, like to people walking in the hallway. But that's where the GeForce mentors sat. And for a lot of those students who didn't know what they wanted to do, the counselors really pushed going to North Texas Central College, which is somewhere near here. But if they didn't have a plan, then they would say, okay, that's fine, but you still should go to college. And then they would tell them to apply to NCTC and ask the mentors for help. Most of the students that did come in there, though, because it was quite a bit, maybe 20 or so, did have a base idea that they wanted to go to specific colleges, but didn't know what steps that they needed to take or if they even had the GPAs in order to qualify to attend that college. And then something else that I observed is that I was actually supposed to be observing, but ended up helping just a little bit because some of the mentors didn't know the questions that were asked. Not that I did, but I was able to look them up or ask Miss Gwen, shoot her a quick message on team to see what needed to be said. So it wasn't a lot of help from any. It wasn't any help from UNT full-time staff members. So mentors are having to ask the high school counselors and interrupt their work in order to assist. For example, a high school student needed help with Applied Texas. Well, Applied Texas looks very different than when I definitely applied back in 2015 and still looks different than when some of the mentors applied. So it's a lot of small things that are different from what we know and need to kind of be updated or taught to the mentors. So with that, some of this is the reason that I picked the literature that I did. So we will go into that in just a second. So I chose 3 literature review options, and I took some blurbs from each of them, and I will explain a little further. So first off, mentoring for G-Force programs are generally developmental and or instrumental, meaning it focused on assisting all students, and meetings varied based on the need. So, in reading this article, I learned that instrumental mentoring meant that the student was learning skills or they were learning skills to achieve specific goals, whereas developmental meant that they were having mentors facilitate the relationship between them and their mentee to help promote that development and autonomy over themselves. In this article, It was also a lot of blurbs from current mentors and how they felt about things. But a lot of mentors felt that the sporadicness of mentoring, you couldn't really measure if you were helping the students or not. So, like I mentioned a little earlier, um, you could have one mentor one week here at the UNTG Force, but then the next week that mentor may not be there, or it could be a completely different set. So, students who may need to come all the time at Denton Ryan High School are thinking that they'll see the three that came previously, but it may be a completely different set of mentors. So they're never really establishing a relationship with anybody. And then they're having to go off notes that the previous mentor did or did not write in order to make sure that they're getting the help that they need and that someone is understanding them. Um, the focus of G-Force mentorship programs, according to this article, said that it needs to focus on high school students and slash or first gen students because generally they are the ones that need help, especially the first gen population. They may not have anyone else to go to, so being able to be that mentor and help them figure out their goals will help them persist on into applying for college and hopefully keep them retained once they get there. Um, and mentors also felt that the work was meaningful, but more training was needed to truly assist and teach the students that they are helping. So, just like I mentioned earlier, it's not a lot of help from full time staff members because UNT staff members usually aren't there. And then you're having to interrupt the counselors who may be going on about their day and doing a lot of different things in order to assist because the mentors just simply don't know. Things change daily, or as usual, you just may not know. So I did sit in on a training, which is a reason that I use this article or this resource is because the trainings that I did sit in on over the semester were basically a bunch of customer service and resume building, but nothing that I sat in on specifically related to mentoring besides the customer service one, which is good. But I think that they should implement these kind of year-round required training so that they are able to learn and pass the information on. Also, it's hard to tell if the mentors were paying attention because they didn't have their cameras on, they weren't really responding, so and some of them didn't show up at all. Secondly, college enrollment is at an levels are at an all-time low since the pandemic happened. I wanted to throw this in there because the G-Force mentors did have an issue with COVID, and a lot of schools, a lot of high schools did not want any outsiders on campus and still currently don't due to COVID and safety concerns. So that really put a damper on my internship experience just a bit because unfortunately just a lot of schools weren't allowing any mentors to come on campus, any visitors at all to come. um, and with that I was able to see that um, students wanted the students that did want the help didn't know who to turn to because they didn't have anybody to turn to. Schools were unable to figure out how to make the Go centers online. Some schools did not want to do it at all. So that does put a damper, and I feel like it contributes to some of the low enrollment. On top of that, I'll move to this next portion. But on top of that, according to this article, enrollment has fallen 6.6% since fall 19 to fall 21. And a lot of people are deciding that they don't think that the value of college is that important anymore. So to relate it back to the to Go Center and the observations, a lot of students didn't know what they wanted to do. A lot of them felt like, well, I was told to do it, so that's why I'm doing it, but not necessarily because they wanted to. Especially with the pandemic, they felt like they should just go to work. And another piece of this source said that most people are working and decide that they need to rethink the value of college because they're getting paid more by currently just going ahead and going into work. So a lot of them felt like if they try to take the time to sit there and apply to college, then they would be messing up the money that they need to make currently. They would basically spending more to make less because they would have to call off. Which was very interesting. We did have a student say that, yeah, I'll go to college, but right now I'm focused on working, so I don't really need to be here at this Go Center today. And of course, we can't force them to stay, but the mentors tried to resonate with them, and they were just like, I just really don't know. So you have to let the student go. Lastly, in another article that I found, stated that school closures have left students with a huge loss in their education, affecting their college preparedness. So, as we see, this one and the previous source are kind of related. I think that since students did have a hard time with COVID and doing online learning, a lot of students are burnt out before they even step foot on a college campus, or a lot of them don't think that they need to go to college because of how things have gone recently in the media with the government regarding education and loans and money and not making money. Um, According to this source, COVID shutdowns left students with education loss that is hard to gain again. And so when they are preparing for college or getting ready to go to college, they either don't have the grades or they do currently have the grades and are unable to see how this they're unable to persist in college because they're not doing very well. I'm sure all of us have seen from especially last year how a lot of first year students are still trying to recover from how they did their first year, as far as not doing well, online learning, failing, not having the traditional college experience, and schools are trying to basically backtrack and see what they can do to help. All of these literature pieces, I think, definitely go with the Go Centers because I can see a lot of these pieces in just Go Centers, just seeing how students are talking about college, seeing how mentors are like, well, we can't really force them to do anything. But I think that if the mentorship programs were structured just a little bit better, so if only a certain group of students were going to Denton Ryan High School every couple of months or every couple of weeks each month, then they will be able to form that one on one bond over the year and help students really decide what they want, or at least talk to them about what they want. Um, yeah. And I truly think that these issues are going to continue happening just because I don't feel like a lot of the media has shown what college is beneficial for post pandemic. Even though the pandemic is still here, we have lessened up on some of the protocols and safety procedures. So students are like, well, I did fine this whole time working at Amazon for $19 an hour, so I don't need to go to college to possibly make less than that. So, some more information that I learned based on this experience was how human resource procedures and how to do timesheets and scheduling and interviewing. I learned how this internship gave me transferable skills outside of higher education, and I understood the needs of today's students. So, unfortunately, fortunately, I will not be in higher education, but I will be in a higher education adjacent role. So I currently got hired at Goldman Sachs to be a campus recruiter, and all of these things that I did in this internship helped me receive this position. So being able to talk to students, seniors, being able to talk to college students and help them, and then also doing that HR piece of it allowed me to really understand how um, we can help students even if we aren't solely in the higher education realm of things. So, in my new role, I will be recruiting students to not only symposiums and being able to help them get a career outside of college, but also being able to help them and see what they need in order to report it back to Goldman Sachs. So I am interested to see how all of these skills transfer over and all of the things that I have learned in higher education transfer over. I do think, though, that with how everything went with this internship, it set me up for that. I just think that there is a lot of things that need to improve in order to continue to get that enrollment back up to at least maybe not normal, but back closest to normal as possible. And lastly, a couple takeaways that I took from this internship and doing these literature reviews is a few things in learning how higher education is as a field of study. So higher education takes pride in trying to help students. They want active change makers to help make things more beneficial for students, and they're trying to help combat low enrollment. So I feel like a lot of this year was a lot of catching up. We were trying to implement things on the enrollment side, even on the student affairs side, that will help students persist and want to be in college. However, I do think that because of how everything is going inside of the higher education professional world, it is a little hard to keep retaining those active change makers in the professional world and help make things beneficial to students. If people see that everyone is leaving higher education as a profession, then a lot of students don't think that it's also worth it to go to college anyway. Higher education, I believe, needs to continue to try to find ways to help students, continue to try to find ways to help the professionals that work to help the students, because in doing that, it should help increase enrollment and doing more outreach and making sure that we are there for students in whatever way that they need, within reason, of course, will help us as a field. I think that we can take as much pride in wanting to help students as we do, but if there's no real change behind it or no real action behind it, then we won't ever get out of this situation. I do think it is important to note that COVID did change a lot of things. So, unfortunately, we do have to think outside of the box a bit. But I think that as higher education is continuing on and continuing to serve the students, they really should hone in on what the students need and really take pride in trying to do more outreach initiatives, because as of this moment, a lot of students are a bit fed up and burnt out with education and being online and almost non traditional learning for such a long time, 2-ish years. Um, yeah. So these are my references. And Dr. Tran Parsons, thank you for listening. It has been a pleasure. So I hope this makes sense. Thank you.